Are you happy in your business? Now, I have had my share of emotional ups and downs in my 20 years of being a solo entrepreneur coach. And the patterns I've seen in myself and in my clients is that those downs are usually when I was personally feeling unfulfilled. Sometimes it was because a launch that flopped, and sometimes it was just life and had nothing to do with business. But those ups, oh boy, those are the times when I was feeling my most authentic and completely aligned to my purpose, or when I just felt like I was rocking that work-life balance. I would be thinking I could do this all day long and never feel tired. One of my loves is sharing what works for me and what has been working for my clients to achieve this very feeling, full of passion, happiness, peace, and freedom. So I decided to create a private podcast for coaches. Maybe you just want to develop better communication skills that boosts engagement, leads to better results, and makes you feel like you're actually making a difference in the lives of the people you serve. Then you're invited too. We talk about this and more in the UBU private podcast for coaches. Whether you're a mentor, a parent, or run a client-focused business, coaching skills benefit everyone and anyone who wants to communicate in a way that builds relationships. Fall in love with your life and business again. Click the link in the show notes for your invitation to join us right now. Then come back and enjoy this episode. Today's episode is a fun episode. Christian Enneagram Coach Eddy joins me to nerd out on the Enneagram a little. So you're going to get to hear us chat about some more advanced concepts that previously I've told you are fluff. But that is if you're still trying to identify your core type. But if you already know your type, then you're going to really love this episode. Especially if you identify as a type 1, or you're interested in knowing how that inner critic affects the type 1 in your life. You are going to love Kim's story. It's time to stop comparing yourself to others and plug into what is uniquely you. Welcome to Unbox Your Personality, the podcast for coaches, parents, and mentors like you who understand that your happiness makes you more effective at what you do, bringing out the best in others. I'm Jen Higgins, personality strategist and Enneagram fluff remover. Get laser focused on who you are and who you aren't, so you're free to make the impact you were born to make. And have fun doing it. Your personality is your business, so let's get down to business. Hello, Kim, Eddy, how are you doing?
I'm doing wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Jen.
I'm so excited to have you here as a fellow Enneagram coach. This is very exciting. And you know what? I want to put this out there that if you feel like your market is saturated, you may or may not be an Enneagram coach. You may be, I don't know, maybe you are a running coach or a fitness coach and you feel like your market is saturated and that you can't stand out. You can. You not only can you stand out, but you can also collaborate with people of your same profession and it not detract from your business. So we may go into that a little bit more, but I'm already going off on a tangent. So can you just let the listeners know who is Kim, what do you believe in, and how do you serve your people?
Yeah, I am Kim Eddy. I am a Christian Enneagram coach, like you said, and I have two daughters. I have a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old. I spend a lot of my time doing that. But in my working hours or, being a mom in the margin of the day or whatever, whatever time my kids allow, I coach people around their personality, around what growth might look like using their Enneagram type. And I really love that. What I believe in, I believe that each and every one of us is born on purpose and for a purpose. None of us are an accident. None of us are an oopsie of any kind, to God. And we all have this purpose for our lives but it can be in the moments. It can be right now. Like there is a purpose for you right now, cleaning up the milk that's spilled, or whatever that looks like. I really believe that we can live with purpose even when it's not what we aspire to. But I also believe that we are given aspiration. And I think that both can be true throughout our lives at every moment. So I guess that's where that question took me.
And I think that's beautiful, because sometimes when we ask that question, who am I and why am I here? We feel like the answer has to be so big, and there is a big answer, but sometimes we just need to get from this moment to this moment. I just keep moving forward, whatever helps us move forward, and purpose of a moment can really drive that.
Yes, I truly believe that, because it is about, we can get lost in the vision because we don't have clarity, but clarity comes with purposeful movement, like you said, like moving forward with a faithful step in whatever that looks like in the moment. And it can feel really mundane. It can feel like, oh, this isn't going to lead anywhere, but God is moving in that. That's what I believe. So I completely agree.
I love that you said lost in the vision. Can you give me an example of that?
Oh, okay. So I am a type 1 on the Enneagram. Type 1s, and I really resonate with this, tend to be frustrated idealists. We have a vision. We know we aren't always right, but we think we are. We know how something should be, how it should end up. And we backtrack immediately. Our thoughts catch up with that vision, and we're like, it's not going to be that way. It's not going to work out. Like, there's so many ways this is going to go wrong. And we start with that vision frustrated. But even if we pull back from that frustration a little bit, we're looking at where we want to go. We think we know the best way to get there, but often we leave out, type 1s, and maybe some other types can resonate with this too. We leave out living life on the way there, that life is going to happen as we move, and that things are going to come in and life is going to shift. And the vision I think that God gives us is often to lead us to the next fork in the road. And it's to lead us to where he can then move us. Because if we don't start here, we're never going to get to that intersection. We're never going to get to that next place where God can say, oh, actually, you thought it was this, but I was just leading here so you could see that ridge over there. And so I think that if we get lost in the vision, we get frustrated with life right now, and it can trip us up and keep us from actually moving where God wants us to be. So that's kind of what I think when I think of getting lost in the vision, especially as a type 1, which is my type.
Yes, I'm glad that you gave me the perspective of a type 1, because type 7s are also that frustrated idealist. And I think type 4s also that frustrated idealist. And so I understand it from my perspective, which is very similar, but it's more fear-based as opposed to doing based. And I can imagine for a 4, it would be more emotional or shame based.
Longing and shame and yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's so fascinating. That's one of the triads that I love to nerd out on. And I've got me an Enneagram coach I'm talking to right now. And I get to nerd out on it. But yes, I love that idea of lost in the vision, and I can imagine that that's going to help a lot of people who are listening, especially if you're a 1 or a 4 or a 7. And I'm curious, I wonder how other types would view that, because we all can be frustrated and we can all have an idealism.
Right. A picture of how we think something is going to happen, or where we're going to end up, or how something is going to feel when we get there. Like, we all kind of know, and we can put ourselves there. Sometimes it takes a little effort to put ourselves there, but we all can. But, we're people and life happens, and we often don't make space for that. Like, if everything goes how I want it to, that's where we're going to end up. And this is what it's going to look like. This is how I'm going to feel. It's all going to be beautiful and done and complete and perfect. And fun, type 7. It's going to be fun too, but it's not going to be, it just doesn't work out that way. And so we end up frustrated, or we think we did something wrong, or we think there's something wrong with us, or we think that we'll just never make it. Or we think that, well, now I just have to choose something. I have to go after something different because this isn't going to fulfill itself. I think you're right. I'm going on long on this one, but I really do think every type, for different reasons, can get lost in the vision. Mm-hmm.
Are you feeling a bit disappointed that you haven't finished that project yet? Are the kids' schedules impacting your business? Or are the demands of your business affecting your relationships at home? Maybe you need a magic formula for that work-life balance before your fire gets so dim or it completely burns out. I've been there. There was a point in my life where I was juggling 2 businesses and homeschooling and had personal health issues. There was barely time to even connect with myself, much less connect with my husband. When I was finally officially diagnosed with ADHD, I felt like that explained everything. I had a new perspective and started approaching things in a new way. So I created a guide containing 20 tips that I personally use, and they have worked for me for helping me stay on course with my goals. Now, you might not have ADHD, but I bet you can relate to having a million distractions during the day. So if you're ready to stop procrastinating or stop being hard on yourself for missing yet another deadline, self-imposed or not, go ahead and download the guide at powercoachjen.com. If you just find one tip from the list that helps you move forward today, you will be so glad you took the time to read it. Go to powercoachjen.com and download the guide right now. Yeah, that would be fun to explore, to sit down and just kind of go through that. So what turned you on to the Enneagram? Because you didn't start out as an Enneagram coach, right? Why don't you share your journey?
Yeah. So my journey starts, I was a piano teacher for a long time, then a worship leader for a while. And then in my church, I heard about, the associate pastor there was like, I think you would make a great coach, and maybe we could put you through you could do some training and we could have you be coaching people here at church. And so I went through a ICF, International Coach Federation, certified program, but with a Christian focus, like to help Christians in their day-to-day walk. How do you actually apply things that you're learning in a tactical, tangible, applicable way? Mm-hmm. And so that's the training that I went through, and it was so eye-opening. I loved it. I found that people who were coming to me for coaching, it was so hard to pin down, well, what do you want to be coached on? Where do you need help? And they're like, yes. And I was like, okay. So, maybe I can go into how I found the Enneagram, because it was after this point I was coaching. Is it okay if I go on that tangent? Because sure. Yeah. So about
tangents
this time,
are all good.
Tangents are good. Okay. So about this time, I was going through some Christian counseling of my own, and counseling, not coaching. And I had, I was with a Christian counselor, a good friend, but I just had not a great experience with that. I didn't feel heard. I didn't feel seen. I was like, we are not communicating. Like, I'm being preached at, but not listened to. And I know that wasn't their heart. That's what was happening. So I was like, how do I communicate what's going on inside of me and the differences and how they aren't seeing my side of this conflict that we're working through? Like, I just don't feel heard. And I found the Enneagram. I went online. I was like, how do you, I forget what I Googled, but it was not, what is the Enneagram? It was like, how do you understand people and be understood, or something along those lines. I went to Google, and Google was like, oh, you want the Enneagram. So I found that, and I was like, what is this? This is weird. But then I read the type 1 description. It was the first one that came up, and I was like, who is in my house? How do they know me so well? That was my experience. It's not everybody's experience finding their type, but that was mine. I felt so understood and seen by somebody who had written on a website somewhere. And I was like, this is my heart. This is what's going on. These are my hangups. These are my strengths. These are my giftings. This is me. And after you feel very seen. You feel very acknowledged. You feel very affirmed. You also get a little bit upset because you're like, that's not really me, but that is really me. That is really me. That those really are some of the ways that I struggle, even though I don't want to admit that, or I might put a pretty face on it. These are some real struggles I have. And so that was my journey to finding the Enneagram. And I dove into it, and I was like, I need to bring this to like people, because this framework can help give us a place to see, oh, this is where we can look at and see if you might want to grow in this area, and you might want to peel back some of these layers in your personality and grow beyond, where you've planted yourself and where you feel like you're stuck. And so that's really how I incorporated it then into my coaching, as a way to, oh, you don't know where you want to grow? Good. Let's talk about it, because, we have a good place to start. So that's how that's that journey.
That's great. I mean, I love how, for one, you knew right away. And I hear that a lot. So there's some types that just kind of know right away when they read. For me, it was not that case. And being seen, I felt a little too seen. I almost felt a little naked once I realized, once I read, oh, I'm a 7. Ouch. But yes, I love hearing how you came to do what you do out of a personal discovery, out of a personal journey. And I think in general, that's what the Enneagram, or what I want the Enneagram to help people in business, is that you got to realize that there's a personal journey first. And until we can discover that personal journey, how are we supposed to take other people on a journey? How are we supposed to help them go through this transformation if we don't go through the transformation ourselves? And I think that's what the Enneagram offers us. And it's ongoing. I don't think just because I'm an Enneagram coach that I am transformed. It's in the moments, right? It's in the
Yes.
moment. It's like, okay, in this moment, I can choose a healthy response that the Enneagram has guided me in, or I can default to this unhealthy response that my human nature guides me in. Not really guides me, but just kind of tosses us over there. Okay, here's this average unhealthy response that you can do.
Yeah. No, I agree. Yeah, I do not feel like I have it all together. I am fighting my inner critic. I am annoyed, when the kids miss the laundry hamper and it falls on the floor, like it is a journey. And like you said, we're both Enneagram coaches. We are on the journey. It's just like, hey, like, follow my lead.
It's like, learn together.
Let's go together. Yep.
That's right. Now, so what's cool about, like, we connected right away. And sometimes people ask me, do some Enneagram types get along better than other Enneagram types? And the truth is, and I know you agree with this because we follow each other on Instagram, but any type can get along with any type. But I think because 1s and 7 have that line together, there's a measure of feeling seen and feeling heard because of that line. Because of whenever I am under stress, my 1 will come out. And when you're feeling confident, your 7 will come out. So we can both be fun and we can both be good.
Right.
And because we have that line, I think the connection comes sooner. Do you agree with that?
Yeah,
Or do
I
you have
think
another
so.
view?
I agree. Personally, I agree. I think there's this, you can come to a mutual understanding with any type and a mutual connection with any type. I really do agree. And you see my rants on Instagram and my story is like, it is not about this. But I think it really is about willingness to listen, willingness to understand, and being, like you said, being intentional and choosing the healthy response. And just like in any area of life, when it comes to relationships, I really do think type 1 and type 7, we kind of start from, oh, I get that part of you.
Mhm.
We kind of are a little bit ahead because we're connected, and every type has these different connections where they're like, oh yeah, I get that.
Yep.
So I agree. hmm But there are some other type ones that I've met who have said that they find that really hard. The type 1 and type 7 connection. But that hasn't been my experience.
I think it really depends on what your subtype is. Do you know what your subtype
It
is?
could. I am a self-preservation type 1. Self-preservation and social.
Okay, so there, that confirms my theory.
Yeah,
So
you didn't know that about me yet.
I didn't. I'm a social self-pres, and so
Oh,
my theory is that so like my husband is a social 9, and social 9s look very different than
mhm.
the other subtypes of 9, but we get along so well because we're both social. So I think all the socials of each type will connect quicker. All the self preses will connect quicker because there's something that we value there.
Right.
That's a little more of a survival skill. I mean, that's what an instinct is,
Right.
right? It's a survival skill.
I can get on board with that because that's what I think about too. That's what I pay attention to secure my safety too, or secure my relationships as well or whatever. Yeah, I can get on board with that. Like I would do the same thing, maybe in a different way with a different vibe, but yeah.
So you're self pres first, right?
I'm self-pres first. I
So what's
think I'm still on the journey, but I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. So what's your well, my take on instincts is that it's kind of like ice cream flavors where you just have there's just a preference. It's the one that if you had to choose, you would choose chocolate, you know?
Mhm.
But we all
Yeah.
have all three. What I have recognized, so when I first started looking into subtypes way back when, I originally thought that I was a sexual subtype. But that was before I knew I was a 7 also. So I originally thought that I was a sexual subtype, and it's only because I connect with people one-on-one. Um, However, it's not my primary. It's not my primary, but at the time it was because it was all I could get. It was all that
Oh,
was
yeah.
it was left because you know my story about my son and him being diagnosed with autism. I kind of had a personal journey there where I kind of isolated myself. I
Mhm.
isolated myself from society because of a social instinct. It was okay, I don't fit I don't fit in here, so I'm going to sacrifice going to this party, or I'm going to sacrifice going to this event because I don't feel like I belong, that
Right.
I'm not
Mhm.
a part of the social structure. Now if I did feel, then I would show up in all of my sevenness, but because that's such a strong instinct of mine, I would sacrifice that. And so then it ends up I would only do well, then I kick into self preservation because that was my second one. But then the 7 would be like, no, I need people. So then when I would go out and have people, I would just have people. When I go out and find people, I would go do these one on ones because it's what I felt more socially comfortable with. And so that I really thought that I was a sexual subtype, sexual instinct. And then when I found out that I was a 7, it didn't make any sense.
Mm,
Not in
mhm.
terms of the motivations of a 7 and all those kinds of things. I was like, no, that's not me. And then when I really studied the instincts, I was like, okay, this makes so much more sense.
Yeah.
So as a self-pres 1, um, just for any listeners who are a type 1 and are looking for maybe what their instinct is, how would you describe yourself?
Yeah, so I tend to a self-preservation type 1, and I resonate with this a lot, can get caught up in worry. Like we sometimes attribute to type 6 the anxiety, like is everything going to be okay? What's coming my way? A type 1 can sometimes get ramped up in that because a type 1, self-pres can get ramped up in that, because it's about making sure everything is good and fine when it comes to, like, I sometimes call it your fort, like, so a type 1's self-preservation fort is going to be well stocked. It's going to be organized. You're going to know where everything is. You're going to have a system so that if there's an emergency, you know what to do. You're going to be a little more focused on being good yourself, and a little more lenient with other people. Although the closer they get in your circle of influence and close relationships, the more you're going to be like, no, you need to be perfect too, or else you can't come in my fort, because I got everything set up. So, I'm harping on myself a little bit, but that's kind of what it feels like to be like things. The natural inclination is to have things just so, because then I feel like I'm okay. My fort is good, so I am good. And, that's not the motivation you want to stay in, but that's kind of a way to feel like I'm surviving. But of course, life is about more than surviving. It's about thriving. So I want to break myself out of that, allow things to be more free and fluid because life happens, and all of that. But that's my natural inclination.
That's really interesting. And I think a lot of times you brought up a good point that the subtypes for wings can really contribute to mistyping, but subtypes, the instincts, can contribute to mistyping as well, because a self-pres 1 can look a lot like a 6 that I can't remember the type, right? I think it's the sexual 6 looks more like an 8.
Yeah,
but
so.
But that stereotypical idea of a 6 of being kind of wringing their hands and being anxious, sometimes that looks like a self-pres 1 as well. And so it always comes down to their motivations.
Right.
Why do they want, I mean, even to be responsible, both a 1 and a 6 want to be responsible, but they want to be responsible for different reasons.
Right. I want to be good.
Mm-hmm.
And if being good means being disloyal, or being good means stepping out and not being secure, I will do that. Of course, I'm not calling myself better than anyone else, because I've learned enough to know, as a type 1, I just hold on to what I think is good, but I'm just a person and I don't always know what's good, but I think I do.
Yeah,
That's where we get hung up.
it's true. It's true. And I know that in my membership, I've got a couple of 1s in there. So I would love for you to share any kind of like daily advice. Like what's something that you tell yourself daily to help you go from moment to moment?
Yes. Oh, that's a good question. One thing that I tend to do is interrogate the critical thoughts, whether I'm having them about myself or about something else. Like, I have developed almost this feeling of having a relationship with the critical side of myself and my anger. And I'm like, I need to get comfortable having a relationship with these two things, these two parts of me, so that I can separate them from myself enough to look at them, right? And not just be caught up in the autopilot and like, oh, I'm angry, things aren't working out, this is frustrating. Also, the critical side of me, the inner critic saying, you're not good enough, you need to do this better. And because you're not good enough, you get to call other people not good enough. And it's just this, it's no good. It's not good for anybody. So for me, it's really this practice of catching those things. The Bible says, take every thought captive, catching those things and interrogating them. Like, is there any truth in this? Where is this coming from? Do I feel ashamed underneath that anger? Do I feel like I've been wronged? Or am I holding on to that I've been wronged to justify feeling angry? Like, is there something I need to work out with somebody else? Is there grace? Is there an invitation from God to show myself or someone else grace right now? What am I holding on? Like, I guess long answer, interrogate that gut instinct that tells you there's one best way, and those thoughts that domino because of that belief. because the belief that there's one right way and you know it really does cascade into frustration, resentment, self-criticism, criticism of others, sneaky criticism, and just being not fun.
Right.
Comes from this belief that we know the right way, and so other people need to follow that, because we can't. As a type 1, I can't even follow what I believe is the right way. Whether I'm mistaken or not, I can't live up to my own standard. So and I can't, other people can't either. I mean, that's ridiculous when you follow it to its logical conclusion. And so for me, it's really just interrogating it as soon as you notice it, and being soft with yourself. Like, you interrogate the anger and the criticism, but you be soft with yourself, because you don't need to add criticism to criticism. I don't need to say, oh, that thought that you were not good enough was not a good thought. How dare you? I've noticed those things when I was first trying to break out of the cycle. I'd get after myself for being stuck in the cycle again. And it was just, so I'm sorry, this answer is getting really long, but for me, interrogate the thoughts that you have, because they come from a belief that probably needs some softness to it. And then make sure you are being soft and gentle with yourself. So
I can
guess.
totally relate too, as a 7 that goes to a 1 in stress. And as a social 7, I tend to hang out in my 1 and my 5 more often than I hang out in my 7. And you made me think of something that I would say about high standards, that any type that's associated with a type 1 that has a line attached or is next door to a type 1 can probably relate to this, of having standards that are so high that mere mortals can't reach it. Because,
it's so true.
yeah, I have high standards, but who wants low standards? High standards isn't a bad thing. And so if we can remember to tell ourselves that high standards is not a bad thing, it's the expectation that we can reach them as quickly as we want to reach them, or as well as we want to reach them. Whatever it is that's driving us, high standards is a good thing. But let's adjust our expectations and give ourselves that grace and being soft with ourselves, so that we can grow and heal and not beat ourselves down and keep picking off that scab.
Right. No, it's so true. Yeah. And as you were talking, I was like, ooh, maybe I could replace high standard with high aspiration, and just because standard really has this denotation. I don't know if that's a word, but I just use it on your podcast, so it's out there in the world now. That there is a wrong on this side of that standard and a right on that side of the standard. And anything up to that standard, leading up to it, ends up being wrong. Right. It's like pass fail is a high standard. And when you set expectations and adjusting them, I agree. And that's what I say too. But I wonder if we could change it to high aspirations, because we want to be moving forward. And, I don't know, I do. I really want to be moving forward, and I want to be improving. And I want to be moving to where God wants me tomorrow. And that requires forward motion for me, faithful motion of some kind, whatever that looks like. Sometimes that's rest, but
rest.
Yeah.
What?
I know, right? That's work. That's work.
Why don't you share how you rest? Because I know type 1s that never rest. They just never rest. So I'd love to hear how you rest.
That is a great question. I am in a season of life where rest is very, very hard. It's hard to come by, and it's hard to force myself to take it. I was telling somebody, I forget where I put this, maybe it was on Instagram, but I was like, I am working hard to not work hard today. Because my inclination is, oh, there's so much to do, and there's so many dots, I's to dot and T's to cross, and there's just so many things, so many tasks, and it can really engulf you and make rest just very difficult. hard. Like it does not come easy to me, especially in this season. So to answer your question, I am a work in progress in that area. For me, it is where I can get it and where I can get myself to allow myself to take it. That was a very long way of saying it's just hard for me to do. Like I have to work very hard at that right now. And it probably looks like watching a show and closing the laptop, not trying to watch my show and do some work at the same time, because just watching the show isn't good enough. I have to be doing something with my time that moves me forward. But no, tonight I'm just going to close the laptop and watch the show. And I know that's not a spiritual answer, but really it's what I'm doing right now sometimes when I let myself.
Well, it could be when you're talking about taking care of your body.
Yes, yeah. And multitasking like that, forcing yourself to do that isn't good for the brain either.
It's not. Yes, I actually had a conversation this week about rest. That's why I was like, oh, tell me how you rest, because I have been noticing that my rest hasn't been rest. It's been exhaustion. And
Yes.
so I sit to rest and then I'm out like a light. And then when I wake up, I'm not rested, even though I was asleep or I was knocked out or whatnot. So it wasn't really rest. And so I find that I guess I'm a work in progress also, Kim.
Yeah. And I agree, because I think that we, in seasons like apparently you and I are both in, and probably a lot of listeners right now, because I think a lot of people are in this season. It's almost like like you said, you aren't resting, you're exhausted. So stopping feels more like defeat. I just can't go anymore.
Yeah.
But I would if I could, but I can't. My body is defeated. So now it's going to sleep, but it's not rejuvenation to move forward. It's survival, I guess. So for me, I am, I'm on the journey of figuring out what is actual rejuvenating and fulfilling rest look like right now, and how do I get me some?
Right. And I actually ended up finding a study to do, and that was really helpful for me because, again, as a 7, if I sit down to rest, it's not about getting things done. It's about being still. That's uncomfortable for me. It's like, I don't know what to do. I could be still if I'm like occupied and doing something, being stimulated somehow or another. And then realizing that as a 7, my growth direction is going to this 5. So let me go find something to study. And so that actually ended up being very restful for me, and it had nothing to do with work. So I wasn't working. It had nothing to do with taking care of my house or anything. It was just something for me. And it's very, very helpful. Helped me get more centered, more to the core of me as a type 7, but also according to what I value. So I wasn't being stereotypical 7 either. It was understanding my pattern of when I'm stuck. That's what I love about the Enneagram, is because it shows you the pattern. It doesn't predict you and tell you who you are, but it shows you the pattern to take that's in the direction of your growth. And so I had that realization of, oh, I'm going to need to go study. I need to stimulate my brain, but something that's not exhausting me.
Yes. No, I love that. I think the part of the homework I'm going to take away from you today is I need to go find my thing. I need to find something that moves into my 7 that might be a little fun with no agenda and just kind of stimulates me in a different way. Get no work, not cleaning the house, not taking care of whatever might be lying around and needs to be done, but just go do something that gets me moving and excited and out of my brain, a little bit. Yeah. So I think
almost mindless, but fun.
Yeah.
Almost mindless, but fun. Yeah. And I had to snicker a little bit because you said homework.
I know. Isn't that? Yeah. Well, but good homework.
I personally
I just said good homework. Yeah. This is the perfect homework for me as a type 1. There you go.
Because that's the right thing to do, right?
Right, exactly.
But that would be a healthy thing to do also, because it's finding something that works for you, because that's the other thing that the Enneagram teaches us, that every type has a different path to growth. And so what works for me isn't necessarily going to work for you.
No, exactly. I love this so much. I came on your podcast and I got some free coaching. Like, this is the best thing.
Hashtag coaches need coaches.
Right? Oh, 100%. So much.
Yes. All right. So before we go, can you just let the listeners know how they can find you online and how they can find your book?
Yes, I'd love to share. Thank you. So I am on Instagram is where I hang out the most. I'm christianenneagram.coach. And that's also my website, christianenneagram.coach. Will take you there to my website. My book just released last November, and it was just such a blessing to have it. I call it it's a COVID book, because it all happened, a little less than a year ago. So it's called The Enneagram for Beginners, a Christian Guide to Understanding Your Type for a God-Centered Life. It's a very long title, but it's all about the Enneagram. It can lead you through finding your type, kind of the basics of what every type might look like, all from a Christian perspective, and keeping what God says about you at the forefront. So that's what that is. And they can find that anywhere books are sold.
Awesome. Fantastic. Well, this has been so great, Kim. I love connecting with fellow Enneagram nerds, and we always have a fun time when we chit chat.
Oh, it's so good. Yes. Thank you so much. This was the most fun, and I'm leaving this call like feeling a little rejuvenated. So thank you for sharing your 7 energy with me. Like, I'm taking it on.
We're good for each other.
100%.
All right. This conversation was literally 2.5 hours long. I kid you not. Thank goodness for editing. But I really appreciate Kim being vulnerable with us and sharing her continued journey with the Enneagram, because there's a personal journey first to then make the impact that we aspire to make. And that progress comes in moments. It's not an if this, then that, the end. It looks more like unbox yourself, unleash your power, then unbox yourself a little more. And then you can unleash more of your power. Rinse and repeat. Thank you for listening, subscribing, and reviewing the Unbox Your Personality podcast. To learn more about yourself, go to powercoachjen.com. Find out how you are different so you can make your difference.